Welcome to Reading Rural, y'all, where we talk about all things rural YA literature and to the rural authors who write it. I'm your host, Dr. Shay Parton, and I'm excited to talk to you about today's topic at hand. If you're a teacher, student, or community member in a rural community, my hope is that the content here honors you and your experiences by discussing and analyzing books that can serve as a mirror for you. If you're an urban or suburban teacher, student, or community member, this series is for you too, and I hope that it can provide nuance to the stereotypical depictions of rural people so often seen in popular media. So come on in, and let's get to it. Hey there. It is a gloomy day today in Texas. Lots of rain, lots of humidity, so my hair is kind of freaking out. And so I decided to do something that would cheer me up a little bit, which is to record this episode. I'm so excited to be here and talking with y'all about Allison Strange's winning story, Fate for a Cat again. And in this episode, I am going to talk about teaching ideas for using her story in a rural classroom. I keep rereading the story to write these episodes, and I just get more and more impressed with it every time I read it. So it's definitely a story that I would use in my classroom, and I hope that some of y'all rural English teachers listening to this will consider doing the same. A couple of things that I talked about in episode 0 of this series were the importance of rurality to student reader-writers and how place is hugely important in shaping our personal identities, but also our identities as readers and writers. And then also the impact that the Heart of Texas Writing Project, combined with my learning about adolescence as a cultural construct, had on the way that I view young writers. So I want to speak on those two things a little bit again. To that first point, I keep going back to this episode of Read Appalachia, the podcast that I listened to recently. If you don't listen to Kendra Winchester's podcast, Read Appalachia, I can't recommend it highly enough. I put a link to it in the description and show notes for this episode, so definitely check it out. She's seriously doing such great work, and I'll probably be writing future blog posts about some of the episodes. But anyway, in episode 1, Winchester interviews Annette Sanuk Clapsaddle, who wrote a book called Even As We Breathe. And Winchester asks Clapsaddle about how she defines literature with a capital L and why she writes. And at one point, Clapsaddle, who's a former English teacher, talks about how place was important to the readers in her classroom and also to her as a reader. She's a member of the Eastern Band Cherokee, and she talks about how place is important to her and also to her readers, and that it was one of the first ways she tried to help readers who hadn't found their jam yet find books to love and find books that help them learn to love reading. And I wish I would have thought about that as a rural teacher. So place offers an important connection for writers and readers, which is a key aspect of Allison Strange's story. To the second point, ELA teachers are often trained to see the lack. They're trained to see the negative aspects of students' writing, to use that red pen to mark up what students have written, to make corrections, to correct spelling and nitpick at grammar and things like that. That's what we're sort of trained to do. And I don't know about you, but that approach never really did anything to encourage me as a writer. I like to be right about things. So when I got stuff wrong, I would try to figure out how to fix it and how to do it better. And a lot of that included unlearning my rural language variety, which is really sad. And it's a part of the work that I do for that reason. But it wasn't encouraging to me. It actually made me feel like I wasn't a good writer and that I would never publish anything. And so, even though I wanted to. And so it's not really helpful practice. Most teachers most of my teachers anyway tried to deliver the bad enveloped by compliments, that compliment sandwich, but the need for writing to be perfect, to not let my country or rurality show in my writing, that's always steered me away from trying to write fiction, especially. We don't talk to students about beta readers and editors and copy editors and line editors and publishers and everything that goes into making a manuscript look like what we see when we see it in book form. We don't talk about that. Instead, we act like they should be able to do all of that on their own, and that every piece of writing they turn into us should be perfect, which is ridiculous. What I love so much about what Deb Kelt and the Heart of Texas writing project taught me was how to focus on what's good, the gems that we see in students' writing, how to find the assets and the good things, and how to build from there. So it's not that we don't notice the areas where students need growth, but it's that we acknowledge the assets that they have in order to support that growth. We don't ignore things that make pieces difficult to read, but we confer with students and we talk to them about their goals for the piece and how their strengths can help them grow in their growth areas to make pieces stronger. And then talking to them about how their writing affects us as readers. So all of that works to help students step into their identities as writers in really powerful ways. And so I'd want to use Allison Strange's story in my classroom to both of these ends, to invite students to think about place and how place functions in fictional texts and what that does for us as readers and how they can do it as writers, as well as think about voice and how Strange crafts the voice of her main character and how that connects to place and what those two things do together to make us feel and enjoy the story. In a critical approach to writing workshop pedagogy, inquiry is what frames our learning about how to write. Trying to figure out how a writer accomplishes something through their craft is essentially what Writer's Workshop is for. It's how it works, which is then exactly how I would use Allison Strange's story in my classroom. This could be a reading unit, a writing unit, a lesson on short stories that combines both. I always try to tie the two together because it just makes sense to me since they inform one another. I'm going to assume that I'd be teaching a short story genre study where students would be reading lots of short stories in the pursuit of writing one. They would simultaneously be reading to learn and try out craft while working through the writing process to produce their own short stories. So in this unit or a series of lessons, students would be inquiring into the genre of short story. What are the techniques and the moves and the genre conventions that writers use to tell effective short stories? When we have limited word count and we have limited time within, the space of the page, that puts constraints on us that we need to think about then how we make our words count. And so that's what I'd be asking students to do. As part of a mini lesson, I talk about and demonstrate how and what I notice about voice and place and make my examination of its effect on me and my reflection of its effect on me as a reader visible. I'd make that thinking visible by reading a snippet of a different short story than Allison's because I want them to use Allison's in their work. So I might choose Kevin Evilsizer or Luke Urban's winning stories from the contest to use as an example in the mini lesson. I'd show them how I pay attention to words and the way that they sound in my head and how that helps me see the place and action in the story, almost like it's a movie. The features of place-connected language practices that are or aren't included, and how the author's choices about both place and voice contribute to the building of the story, the world of the story, the characters in the story. Then I'd introduce Allison Strange's story, tell them about the contest. Authentic audiences for students writing are key, and that's another thing that Deb Kelt taught me in the Heart of Texas writing project, and I don't know why I never thought about how important it was before, but I didn't. So I'm glad that I do now. So I tell them about the contest. I tell them that Allison Strange, the author of the story we're going to be reading, is a young writer just like them. And then I'd ask them to get together in small groups, in writing groups that I had probably already formed at the beginning of the unit, to talk about the story using the techniques that I just showed them, the sort of metacognitive techniques of looking at words and reflecting on how they're affecting us, and then ask them to inquire into Allison Strange's use of place and voice in her story. So after coming up with some ideas, they turn to their writer's notebooks and the pieces that they are working on as part of this short story genre study, and then they would try out some of those techniques to see how they worked in their own writing. So the ideas, the techniques that they identified in Allison Strange's story, then they would sort of put to use in their own work in their writer's notebooks, just to try it out. So now they would have some more writing tools at their disposal, and we've reinforced how we can learn craft by reading other writers, and that young people, including them, have talent and skill that they can put to work on the page for their own goals and purposes, and not just my goals and purposes as their teacher. Now, if you're like me and didn't or don't know anything about critical approaches to writing workshop pedagogy, the short of it is that students get to choose the topics of their writing. There might be some boundaries, like what kind of genre they'll be writing, but each unit is designed to maximize student choice and preserve students' agency as readers, writers, thinkers, and learners, because when we do that, students are more motivated to learn the skills that we need them to learn. While in the genre study, students read other works in that genre to identify for themselves what the conventions of the genre are, rather than the teacher telling them what they are in some kind of lecture with fill-in-the-blank notes. And the teacher delivers mini lessons that showcase techniques for discovering those conventions, as well as how to apply them in their own writing. And these are no longer than 15 minutes, which is why they're called mini lessons, because they're just, it's a laser focus on one skill that you want to teach in this particular lesson that you want students to be able to apply in their reading or writing. And then after you demonstrate it yourself and make your thinking visible, then students have the opportunity to immediately apply what they've learned to their reading and writing during their work time. And these mini lessons can cover everything from how to get started, how to face a blank page, how to employ a specific technique of drafting, so like voice or place, how to use certain techniques when it comes to revision, etc. It really runs a really wide gamut. So then each of these mini lessons, whatever mini lesson it is that you do, students use that to work toward whatever their goal is for wherever they are in the writing process. And the writing process looks like this. First is collection. Students write to collect ideas about what they want to write about, and then they choose an idea. Then once they choose an idea and they know their genre and they sort of have a vision for the piece, then they might do some more collecting around that particular idea and do some, sketching in their notebooks, whether that's drawing or just doing rough writing sketches of their idea. And then they'll do a rapid draft where they just get their ideas on the page. Drafting isn't revising, it's not editing. You don't do it all at the same time. You just get the words out, misspellings and all, on the page. And then after we have a complete draft, then we revise, which is literally re-envisioning what the piece could be and look like. And then we polish and edit for readability, and then we publish. And we publish by sharing our work with classmates, with the community, and or with the nation and the world through someplace like Literacy in Place. So each lesson in the unit would follow a similar structure, which would be, there'd be a mini lesson, then there's student work time and application, during which teachers run conferences with students where they confer and they figure out what students are working on. Students can tell them what they need, where they need support, and we can provide that individual instruction. And then at the end, there's some share and debrief time where students talk about challenges that they overcame, things they're still thinking about, things they tried out and how it went. And I will never go back to another way of teaching writing. This sketch that I've just provided is super skeletal. So if you want to know more, if this appeals to you, you could check out the work of Randy and Catherine Bomer and find your nearest National Writing Project chapter and look into their Summer Institute. I am particularly biased towards the Heart of Texas Writing Project because that's the Summer Institute that I did, and it was so revolutionary for me. So folks who are close or local to the Austin area, I cannot recommend the Heart of Texas Writing Institute enough. It's life-changing, so check it out. I'll put some links of resources you can check out for more information in the description and show notes below. And I hope that you'll look into it because Deb Kelt is amazing, and it seriously changed who I am as a teacher and a writer and a person. So that's it for this time. I will see you next time for my interview with Allison Strange herself, and I am so excited. You don't want to miss it. She's fabulous. So stay tuned and check it out. See you next time. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode. If you like what you heard and want to support the show and keep it a viable endeavor for me, it'd be great if you would like and comment on the YouTube episode. You could talk about what you liked most or what you walked away with. It'd also help if you'd subscribe to the channel. You can also head over to the Support Us page on the Literacy in Place website. There you can learn about all the different ways you can support this work. Like, you can like and follow the website itself, find out where to engage with us via social media, and go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Or you could shop our storefront on bookshop.org to get the book featured in this episode or any other books that catch your eye. You could also buy us a coffee at coffee.com and donate once or set up a recurring donation. All of this would be immensely helpful in keeping this show going. So thanks a bunch for doing what you can. Well, that's it for this episode. Until next time, y'all come back now, would ya?